My name is Dyab Jahjah. I'm a Lebanese-Belgian activist. I mainly work in anti-racist movements, but also I'm interested in, of course, in other issues, mainly third worldist, international solidarity, and so on.
In 2009, you were in Lebanon and you started the People's Initiative, a movement over there. And it was with people who later became key figures in the Arab Spring. What was that movement about, and what were the goals, and who did you start it with?
Yes, we were a group of people actually active within the Arab National Movement, and in 2008 we started debating whether it is the right strategy to stay within the movement or to go and form a different stream. And actually the essential issue was the debate on priorities. The Arab National Movement historically was focusing on the liberation battle in Palestine, which is a very important battle in the frame of decolonization and still is today, and neglecting the struggle against the Arab regimes because it was assumed that it will be divisive and consume a lot of energy, and that we need these regimes actually to liberate Palestine. In 2008, a group of us started thinking otherwise. We started thinking that maybe we should first take on these regimes and like put things in a more constructive dynamic within our own countries, give the people more power, liberate the people from the oppression of regimes, and then only we can unchain a dynamic that can liberate the land from the colonizer. So that was the different approach we started adopting. And in 2009, a group of us thinking this way left the Arab National Movement and started the People's Initiative. And the People's Initiative was represented in several Arab countries. We were present in Lebanon, Tunisia, Syria, Egypt, Morocco, and a few other countries. And basically, the first declaration in a 10 points program that we had was our will determining the priority of the struggle against the dictatorships and claiming the power to the people as an opposition to the regimes. And of course, we started working on this platform, and we were criticized from a lot of other groups, including the Arab nationalists, but also the regimes and their political parties and organization working with them. But when the events started in Tunisia, it happens that one of our main ideologues of the People's Initiative, Dr. Lamin Bouazizi, is family member of Mohammed al-Bouazizi, the young man who burned himself on fire and unleashed actually what later became the Tunisian Revolution, and by extension the whole Arab Spring. Dr. Bouazizi organized the first demonstration in Sidi Bouzid. He was with 200 people there, and I remember him emailing me from day one that this is gonna go far. And later on, Sidi Bouzid kept rebelling for 2 weeks before the rest of Tunisia realized that this is more than just a casual uprising against an incident or limited incident. So in Syria, like one of our comrades, the Omosh, also organized the first demonstration on the 15th of March in Damascus, and it was in front of the Ministry of Interior Affairs, and he was arrested during that demonstration. And 3 days later, Dara exploded basically on the 18th of March, which was the real beginning of the revolution in Syria. It's not that we claim that we unleashed these events, but it is a fact that in two countries at least, Tunisia and Syria, people who were involved with the People's Initiative played a key role in the first on the first days of revolutions. And I believe that political awareness of these people shaped a more politicized uprising in Tunisia. And then Tunisia shaped all the rest. That's the reality. But of course, I think that everybody knew, or at least people who were active knew, that something was looming in the Arab world already in 2006, 2007. We knew that something was coming. We knew that just a small incident will unleash forces of change. And we also knew that nothing is guaranteed, and that there is a possibility that total chaos will succeed some of these regimes or all of them. So this is also a risk that we knew was existing. But I think all by all, sometimes you have to jump into the unknown, because the status quo is just not acceptable. And some people might think that is reckless, but I don't think so. I think it's the process, it's a historical process, and eventually it will bring the outcome, not necessarily the outcome we dream of, but like a better outcome than what was the case before these events.
And the Arab Spring was very popular in the West, but the Syrian revolution still isn't. How come there's so little support for the Syrian revolution in the West?
Well, first of all, none of the Arab revolutions were popular in the West. I mean, unless if you want to talk about the mainstream, Tunisia was not very popular in the mainstream. I remember the French government saying that they want to send police to help the Ben Ali regime. When Egypt started, of course, everybody was worried because Mubarak was, one of the best friends of the West. I think only when they saw that there's a successful revolution in Tunisia and in Egypt, and that there is a movement in the rest of the Arab world, they realized that something is happening. And I think at that moment the establishment, the governments, wanted to recuperate, or at least to go on board, and they jumped on the occasion in Libya to do that.
Okay, but when I say popular, I meant amongst activists.
Right. Okay. If you want to address the activists, I think basically the main issue is, from the activist point of view, is how to assess each regime apart. I think there was not much discussion on the pro-imperialist nature of Mubarak or Ben Ali, but when it came to Gaddafi and to Assad, I think there is a bigger discussion, and a valid discussion as far as I'm concerned, on that. You can, that's the classic divide between the orthodox anti-imperialist line versus the anti-imperialist and anti-despotism line, like the pro-human line, the pro-people's line. And I think this schism has been like very dominant in the leftist movement everywhere in the world since the 50s, even 60s. I mean, like there are similar discussions that were done during the Spring of Prague, and during a lot of other during Tiananmen Square. I mean, these are like discussions always coming in. To tell you the truth, I think like people who are really focused on a very macro anti-imperialist line are really losing credit, because in reality, anti-imperialism, I mean, we hate imperialism because imperialism kills people and oppresses people and is anti-humane, and it's not because we have theoretical model where we don't like imperialism because it doesn't fit in our theoretical model. I mean, the essence of progressive thinking, of leftist thinking, is humanism, and that's the essence of it. It's so of course then you cannot endorse a regime that is as oppressive and as murderous as any imperialist power, whether you theoretically qualify it as imperialist, part of the capitalist center, or part of doesn't matter. The essence is the same. It's an oppressive regime. It oppresses human beings, and so in that sense, I think there are people who are really still operating out of that perspective are becoming outdated. And and I think they are also wrong. On the other hand, of course, we have to be aware that we can support a revolution in Syria, and I supported the revolution in Syria from day one, and I still do. But we have to be aware of the fact that policy, Western policy, mainly the American policy, but also European policies, try to instrumentalize these dynamics for other ends than the freedom of the people. And that is then I make a difference between a legitimate, alert attitude towards the interest of imperialism, and on the other hand, a very cynical and almost absurd support of dictatorships and murderous regimes. So I'm with the people, and I'm against the regime, and I'm against imperialism. And I'm also against fascism among the people's ranks, because of course, when you have a total war in a country and it becomes chaotic like in Syria, you have fascism, showing its face. And in the case of Syria, it's religious fascism. In other places, it can be a different kind of fascism. They come in the name of nationalism or in the name of religion, and they try to so-called fight the fight. And they are more performing than democratic powers because they are more fanatic, and they have usually more militarized history. So they are then the stars of the moment. And then people tend to throw the child with the bathwater and say, oh, look, they are fascists, and that's happening in Ukraine too. You see these fascists, and then people say, oh, because there are some fascists and they are stealing the show, then everybody's a fascist, and this whole revolution is fascist. And all of a sudden, Putin is like some kind of softy ecological, alternative activist. The guys have institutionalized state fascism, and nationalism, and then you go and because of some crazy skinheads who are a danger and should be also they should be isolated. They should be also fought against. But I'm more worried about Russian militarism and Russian imperialism actually in the region, whether it's in Chechnya or it's in Ukraine or whether it's in Central Asia and Georgia. Russia has also imperialist policy. Russia is also having imperialist policy in the Middle East. It's supporting Assad. At the same time, it's contracting with Israel to extract Palestinian gas out of the sea. Actually, so it's helping colonize Palestine and sending its warships to the Middle East. Not to protect, like they sought to protect Assad, but actually to protect its interest on the Israeli gas field, so-called Israeli gas field. So, is this the Russia? Is this like the carrier of a progressive project? Some people really still believe as. At the time of the Soviet Union, I could understand that there's debate because you could still defend that there's an ideological. I did not believe there was an ideological project going on, but you could argue because at least they were keeping the appearance of that. But nowadays, there's no secret about it. It's just a nationalistic, capitalistic, oligarchic regime. And how on earth can you, consider that regime more progressive than others just because they're opposed to the Americans? I don't see it. I don't see things that way.
So, since we have big parts of the left supporting regimes like Assad and from Putin, can we still talk about them being left? Because if you support dictators, I don't think that's a leftist viewpoint or a value.
Yeah. That's what I think too, but I don't want to, claim the authority to define who's left or who's not. I think, I would leave that up for every individual assessment. I just think that such a position is morally indefendable. Whether you consider yourself left or right or center, this is morally a bankrupt position. I believe that every regime, even democratically elected regime, even regimes emanating from pure revolutionary legitimacy, when you commit crimes, you lose that legitimacy. Crimes make you lose legitimacy. I don't believe mistakes of government make you lose legitimacy if you have democratic legitimacy. If you, for example, the regime of the Muslim Brotherhood or the President Morsi of Egypt did not have a good policy. He had a bad policy, but as far as I'm concerned, did not commit crimes there. So I don't believe he lost his legitimacy. So I don't believe there was a revolution against him. I believe there was a military coup against them. So they were bad, and I was hoping they will, keep on having bad policy, and then they will be crushed in coming elections, like it should be. Like bad policy, you punish with a ballot, you know. But crimes make you lose your legitimacy, and crimes, and especially shooting other people and killing the people, you cannot punish in elections that are non-existent or that are of you know, farce, and not even, you know, the Syrian people tried for 6 months to demonstrate peacefully and tried really to just have a civil answer to military dictatorship and to repression. But this did not work, and eventually the people were forced into a militarized conflict, and we know that that was what the regime wanted, but at a certain moment you just cannot avoid it. You know it's the wise thing to do, but like people, when their blood is in the streets, they're not gonna act 100% strategically, you know? So this is a reality, and that's why whatever happened afterwards is the responsibility of that regime. Not because now there's a fascist enemy dominating the scene that you can say that our regime is all of a sudden a good regime. Whatever happened after the Syrian revolution started, which was a peaceful revolution, is the responsibility of the party that militarized it by using military weapons or military power against it, and that is the regime.
So a lot of young people in Belgium, they are going to fight in Syria, but then they're going to fight with the extremists. Are these reports correct, or is this sensationalism? And if it's correct, why do they choose to go fight with the extremists like ISIS rather than the more moderate forces like Free Syrian Army?
Yeah, I think most of these reports are correct. They are not a lot, but there's a group of European youth. You know, the estimations are around 2,000 people from all over Europe who went to Syria to fight, and the fact that they join mainly ISIS or al-Nusra, which is Al-Qaeda, is due to ideological reasons. They usually are indoctrinated in that ideology here before leaving, and then they go join these organizations. Also, these organizations have the most, let's say, field credibility, in the sense they are the most efficient, they are the most, you know, like they have the most sophisticated communication strategies, while nobody really, I mean, would know where to start if they want to go join the Free Syrian Army to start with. Second, the Free Syrian Army is not open to foreign volunteers. You know, it's not you know, encouraging that, except some Islamist groups within its ranks or linked to it, and that are also kind of you know, double in the sense that they also adhere to Salafi ideology and so on. So it's a complicated thing. There's not a lot of clarity in Syria as to the brigades that are there and so on. But I think it is anyway obvious that people who are already Salafis here and radicalized here ideologically will go join the most radical groups there. That's often the case. And on the other hand, I think it also reflects the fact that the Free Syrian Army has a problem level of leadership, or on the level of, you know, communication, and cannot really attract and does not want to attract that, you know, because, you know, it is resisting against the interference of foreign fighters in Syria, whether on the side of the regime or through ISIS and this kind of organization.
And how does the Belgian government handle the situation?
I don't think they're doing much. You know, the thing is, they try to handle it on the micro level. They try to, in every municipality, you know, to have a list of youth that are under influence of such ideologies and so on. But I don't think this is the main problem. I don't think this is where the Belgian government is going wrong. I think the Belgian government is going wrong on a different level, and a more structural level, where it's actually failing to. Because, you know, one of the motivations of these youth, a part of ideological motivation, is the fact that they feel humiliated here too, that they feel marginalized, and that, you know, such a move is for them like a symbol of rebellion against that humiliation, that they retrieve their pride, that they retrieve, you know, what they consider as a goal in life and so on. So I think where the government is failing is by keeping this exclusion and this marginalization and discrimination mechanism in place, and creating a sort of reserve where these extremist groups can tap in and recruit people who are desperate because of poverty and discrimination. I believe if there were better policies on that level, there will be much less people falling and victims to extremist thoughts and so on. I think there is a link between poverty and discrimination and humiliation on one hand, and some people belonging to groups who are marginalized making wrong choices.
And so, yeah, that connects to the book that you wrote called The City Belongs to Us. What was your motivation, and who did you write it for? What was your target audience?
I don't think I wrote that book for a particular audience. I think I wrote it for all citizens, because this is the message that I want to pass to everybody, and mainly first that we have a problem together, not only a problem with each other. That mainly we are in the same ship, and it's sinking, and if it does sink, we will sink all together. So and that problem is the fact that we have now what you call super diverse cities in Europe, cities with people coming from all over the world. This is in a way the boomerang of colonialism. It's the boomerang of all the policies that Europe has been, conducting for centuries now. Europe was everywhere in the world before, and now the whole world is in Europe. And on the one hand, for a lot of Europeans, this is a shock, and this is they're feeling a feeling of they're being estranged at their own country. That's how they're feeling. That's how they experience that. On the other hand, I believe this is mainly an opportunity for Europe to position itself in a different way on the world scale, but also internally to solve some issues that are imminent, like the aging issue in Europe and the lack of innovation for the time being economically. Europe is doing really bad on all levels. In comparison to the United States or to China, Europe is really in trouble. And I believe that this diversity that we have now is an opportunity to go beyond, to come with a new story. And that's I think the key word. We need a new story that can connect people together. That is a myth, of course, because all connecting stories are myths. But I believe that we do need myths, and we do need stories. And even though if it's constructed, but like that story should be a new kind of story. Like in a way, it's a decolonized story because it's linked to diversity. And I believe, like there was an anti-colonization struggle in the third world, it got decolonized, but Europe never got decolonized. Europe was still colonial in its way of thinking, and it's applying that colonialism internally on its own population, but also on non-native citizens who are like descendants of immigrants. And I believe these dynamics will decolonize Europe, and if Europe is decolonized really, then it can have a different kind of role in this planet, because now Europe talks about its mission, that's civilizational mission, but this is still colonial discourse. It's a discourse that of the white man's burden, like it's still, they give it a different sauce, they give it a different, package, but it's the same essence. I believe these changes, and what I'm actually pleading for in my book is to decolonize this story, to make a new anti-colonial Europe that has a different role, that's inclusive, and therefore we need to have also new identities. We cannot function with the current identities we have now. The identity stories that people are telling now are also old, from the 19th century and beyond, like resurging nationalism in Flanders, for example, in Belgium, or in the Netherlands and elsewhere. These are old stories. These are dying stories, and when things die, they tend to be heavy, just before becoming lifeless. And I think that what we're witnessing now, these resurges of nationalism here and there, are just like these moments before death, you know. But this death of these stories does not mean the death of Europe. I believe it means the birth of a new Europe and a much more inclusive, much more progressive Europe. Of course, that's utopic a bit. And in my book, I'm also depicting a different picture, and I'm saying it can go also in a different direction, the direction of ethnic conflict, of deterioration, of dismantling of all, you know, all what the European working class, for example, has struggled for, like the welfare state, the social rights, and so on. This can also go down the drain if people don't find the right balance, and if people don't choose to struggle together for something new. I believe we're all gonna sink. So it is time. It's a bit, you know, there's change going on and coming, and it's gonna happen whether we like it or not. It's happening already, and the question is, how are we going to deal with it? Are we going to deal with it in a way that, you know, that is very defensive and very negative, and that will lead us to a conflict, social, ethnic conflict, and that conflict will be destructive? Or are we going to deal with it in a way that is daring, and that is really thinking out of the box, and positive, optimistic, and create something new?
Yeah, racism obviously is a big theme for you in the book. What's the deal with this reverse racism that I hear everywhere?
Yeah, reverse racism is what people see as racism when, you know, victims of racism express racist communication of prejudice against what they conceive as their oppressor. For example, when black people use racist stereotypes against white people, or when women use sexist stereotypes against men, and so on. And first of all, there's an essential problem with what people consider reverse racism, because I believe discrimination is part of a power game, you know, it's part of a power structure. I don't think you can separate the reaction of people towards each other from the positioning of people towards each other in the power structure and the balance of power. I believe you cannot speak of women oppressing men just because women react negatively to men, or generalize men because men have more power than women, and that relationship, you know, a woman cannot really discriminate men. You know, you can find an individual case where that happens, you know, where there's a woman who rejects a man for an employment and takes a woman. I mean, that might happen, but there's still nothing that breaks the rule, and the rule is that women are marginalized by men. So you cannot talk of reverse sexism there. It's you can call it something else. It can be stereotyping, negative communication, but it's not the same. The same goes for racism. You can have hatred from the oppressed to the oppressor, you know, and that is kind of a normal reaction. Not always the most constructive, but it's like, it's human. I give an example. During the Second World War in Europe and in America, nobody spoke about Nazis, or sometimes they did, but like, they mainly were talking about the Germans, you know. So when people in France were bombed, they were saying, well, we're bombed by the Germans. The bloody Germans did this, the Germans did that. And nobody really was protesting and saying like, oh, you shouldn't say the Germans, you know, you should only say the Nazis because some Germans are against the Nazis, you know, like Nazis hijacked Germany, blah, blah, blah. Of course, we all know this is true, but you cannot blame somebody under the bombs for saying the Germans, you know, because that's what these bombers are too, you know, they are also Germans. So, nowadays, it seems that people are like very keen that that should be avoided, you know. I understand that we should communicate in a more positive way. If you are an intellectual, or you're an activist, or you hold political office, I don't think you should indulge yourself in this kind of communication and generalize your enemy. I give another example. People in Palestine, when they are bombed by the Israeli army, they're usually calling them the Jews. The Jews bombed us. Why? Because they are Jews. I mean, you know, and they're claiming that and then affirming that, and they're claiming that Israel is a Jewish state and it should be exclusively a Jewish state and so on. So it's not really weird of the Palestinians to call them the Jews, right? And when a Palestinian under bombs, go say, oh, the bloody Jews bomb us. this is not anti-Semitism. This is just saying the bloody German, just like saying the bloody German, or these machist men, or like racist white people. It's this kind of generalization that the oppressed person usually makes, and that I believe the oppressed person has the right to make as well. But like, if you're an intellectual Palestinian or an intellectual black activist, and you use that same terminology in an ideological, structural way, that becomes problematic. You know, if you say that by nature a man will always oppress a woman, that is also problematic. Or you say by nature a Jew will always kill a Palestinian, or by nature a German will always kill a French person, and so on. That's problematic. So I believe that we must make a difference between how people react to oppression and the anger they express and generalizing they make, which is their right, whether they're black or women or Palestinians or so on. And on the other hand, how intellectuals communicate and how activists communicate and people who are more politicized communicate, and they should be more careful in their communication.
In your book, you talk about a leftist form of racism, or a more docile form of racism. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. Racism is not just a right-wing ideology. Racism is actually across ideology borders and frames. And for example, here in Belgium, within the frame of what they call the integration debate, and that is our integration policy, and that is the policy that was prescribed in order to include, so-called include the non-native citizens or the descendants of immigrants. But eventually it is a policy that is actually aiming at assimilation and aiming at eliminating diversity and not really managing it, you know. This is the same as what the far right wants. The far right wants also to get rid of diversity, but has different means. The far right says, okay, just kick them out, okay? Left-wing racism says like, no, we're human, we're civilized, we don't kick people out. Let's just assimilate them so that they are no more different of us. They're just exactly thinking like us, acting like us, believing like us, dressing like us, and so on. And the problem in this is, of course, that you also problematize diversity. So, and why do you do that? Is because you consider your way of life superior. And that is a form of racism as well. And it is often left-wing, that kind of racism. Racism is not just hating people because of their color. You can love the color of people and be racist because of that. You can have a taste for exotic things and be very racist, you know. So these are things that people usually use to say, oh, I'm not a racist because, you know, I like black people. But yeah, that's a different story, you know. On the other hand, there's also other forms of racism that are linked to social class also. And they manifest themselves nowadays in the process of gentrification that you have in the cities, where you have middle class or upper middle class people, who are mainly white people, moving into neighborhoods originally inhabited by working class or even underclass citizens, who are usually immigrants or people of immigrant descent. And then they take over the neighborhoods by investing in it and making the prices go up, and then people have to move out. And then the government and the municipalities, they like that process, and you know, they think that, okay, it's really refurbishing the neighborhoods and making things look better, and it's the city coming alive again, and so on. But you know, it's basically what it is. It's just kicking out people out of their homes and out of their neighborhoods in order to move other people in their place. And turning the city into some kind of a fort, or you know, some kind of a castle, protected castle for the middle class and upper class, and dumping all these people out of the city. And that process is a racist process as well. I believe if you want to fight against poverty, you don't have to fight poor people. If you want to fight against poverty, you have to invest in poor people, in poor neighborhoods, and you have to invest in education, you have to invest in employment and in housing, and then you lift people out of poverty, and this way also the neighborhoods will look better and the city will go alive. But nowadays they fight against poor people instead of fighting against poverty, and that is a form of racism as well, even if it's social economical. But the danger is it is now a class discrimination going along with ethnic discrimination. These two processes go together.
So You have two doom and gloom scenarios, and those are situated in Antwerp. And then you have one more utopian scenario, and that is situated in Brussels. Is that a coincidence that you picked those cities, or did you have a motivation for that?
No, it's not a coincidence. It's I have a motivation, and that is that in Antwerp, on one hand, there's a political party on power that is very right-wing and nationalistic, and that's the NVA. And on the other hand, there is still a dominant ethnic group in Antwerp that is really claiming the city as their own and expressing it in a very non-complex way as being we are boss in our own city, and everybody thinks that that's a normal statement, and nobody sees that, you know, like this is not a statement that you can make in the 21st century anymore. In the time of globalization, in the time of people diversifying everywhere, still think you're gonna be boss as an ethnic group in a place. While in Brussels, there's already super diversity in the sense that there's no majority anymore. There's no ethnic group that is in the majority in Brussels, and therefore there are also no minorities in the ethnic, let's say, identity sense of the word. You have social classes that are more marginalized and so on, but you don't have an ethnic group feeling a minority and another ethnic group feeling a majority. And this creates an opportunity for coming together and identifying with the city itself, which Brussels do. They identify with their city, whether they are from Moroccan origin or Flemish or French speaking, or even expats coming from Italy or Spain to work here for the European constitutions. They identify with the city, and it's a real identification. It's not fake. It's not a story that's being promoted from a certain establishment somewhere. It's real. It's living in the streets. This does not mean that the problems are already solved. Brussels has a lot of problems on social and economical levels, but at least this common identification creates an environment that is conducive for solutions, and less conducive to conflict. Because from when you identify with each other, that's already a step in the right direction. While in Antwerp, this is not the case. It's very, very tense, and it's very polarized. And even though Antwerp has more more social economical possibilities than Brussels, there's more money in Antwerp, they claim. I don't believe in that, but at least this is the myth that has been told. Still, because on this ethnic level and identity level, it's very, very polarized. I don't think, if there is doom scenario, it will be played in cities like Antwerp. It's not just Antwerp, but there's a lot of cities in Europe like that, while Brussels is one of these cities where you think that there might be a possibility of a solution.
So especially your doom and gloom scenarios were very extreme. They took very extreme effects, and you designed them with the help of game theory. Mm-hmm. How do you do that? What is that?
Game theory is actually quite old. It's not new. People have been doing that for. I studied game theory during my studies at university. I did political science, and we had a seminar on game theory where we tried to create models, simulate actually model, and project them to the future and see how the evolution are. For example, if you have a conflict between two ethnic groups that is on minimal escalation level, and then you combine it with other ingredients of conflict like social economical problems, so on, and then you project in the time the growth of these groups and the growth of the other economical problems, then you come into a situation that's quite explosive. Mm-hmm. If you see the problems today, you might think, oh well, it's not a big deal, but what will happen over 20 years? Let's give an example. Who would have thought that the Soviet Union will collapse if you were talking in the 1982, but a few years later it was gone. That would have also sounded very crazy back then, but they were in security agencies and so on, already scenarios circulating on possible doom scenarios for the Soviet Union, for the United States, scenarios for nuclear war and so on. So it's just a discipline that is quite used mainly in security studies. And I think for me, I use it in my book also because I wanted to, it was like a wake-up call. It's like an exercise of thinking, to project, to make people aware that what is today conflict that can be kept under control can escalate in a way that is normal over a period of 20, 30 years, combined with other things that are also changing economically and demographically and so on, can really escalate in a way that that you cannot imagine. And I believe, you know, it had the effect because a lot of people were shocked, and then but a lot of people start thinking that, oh, you know, like we have really maybe to do something about this, you know, and this is the effect that you want to reach with such scenarios.
When I see initiatives like Ringland or the Occupy movement, I see mostly white people. And when I talk to the organizers, they say, no, but we're open to everybody. And some people even say, well, you know, the non-white people, the non-native Belgians, they don't seem to be interested too much in environment and stuff. So what's the deal here? How come there's no more diversity with these things?
I mean, it's a combination of things, and this is not just in protest movements, but everything in the society. You know, on one hand, you can say that you're open for diversity and do nothing about it effectively, and then you're not really open for it. You know, because you know the access to these kind of groups should also be stimulated. It should also be, you know, like proactively looked for. And in order to do that, you have to communicate adequately with these groups. So there's like diversity is something you have to manage also on communication level, even in an activist group, just like in a political organization or in a company or in a newspaper. So if that is not done, you know, like groups that are systematically being excluded from society will not tend to come and knock on your door, because you know what they're used to receive on different levels is also negative rejection. So they have also pride, and they will say like, okay, to hell with you, I'm not gonna come to your places, you know. So they tend to like you know, spare themselves the humiliation by not really being very you know, entrepreneur in terms of looking for contact. So people should realize that, you know, you cannot include people just by waiting for them. So that's one thing. On the other hand, it is true that not just immigrants or people of immigrant descent, but also poor people in general are not really very open towards what some people consider post-materialistic issues. You know, whether it's the environment or rights of you know, like animal rights or so on, and a lot of these causes are not really very popular among poor people, because poor people are busy with their basic rights. They're still fighting to eat and to have a house and to have education for their children, so they couldn't care less about the environment or about animal rights and so on. And this is also like reality. It's a matter of priority, you know, like you cannot, because all of a sudden a big group of middle class, upper middle class white people decided that they want to save the animals and the environment. It doesn't mean that people who are really in dire straits will go and say like, you let's go do that, you know. These people have to save themselves first, and they are really facing existential problems. So yeah, I think it's a combination of these things, and I think people should show understanding for that. You cannot induce people into a struggle that they don't identify with. What you can do is you can connect struggles. You can really go struggle with them on their issue, and show an anti-racist attitude, and go fight with people on against discrimination on the employment market, against housing discrimination, education, and so on, and be an anti-racist movement explicitly. And then you can inspire people to come in solidarity as well. And then you have contacts between people, and then people explain each other's the issue. You know, they can explain, okay, that's also important for us, the air we breathe, and so on. So I think this is like engage each other in the struggle, and common struggle is the only way to include people to get solidarity. And where is the responsibility? I think the responsibility is always that of people who are more, let's say, closer to the mainstream or to establishment than the others. I don't think it's the marginalized minority that should go and seek connection with part of the progressive middle class of the majority group. I think it's the other way around.
And this is what you aim with your new movement that you're starting, Movement X?
Well, in our case, it's a bit different because we already had an identity politics struggle 10, 15 years ago, and we already positioned ourselves on the political map and we created a large group of activists that are very politicized, and that's the Arab European League experience. And that allow us now to take an initiative where we can attract other people as well. So we come from a minority group, but we are strong enough, we are emancipated enough because of our own struggle to actually take an initiative now that is open for everybody. That wasn't the case 10 years ago or 15 years ago. We had to have our own group, affirm our own identity first, to have an exclusive struggle from what we you know, on the characteristics that were the reasons of our exclusion. You know, we had to depart from them first. But now we are strong enough to have an inclusive movement, and this is the new movement we're starting. And it's not that we are in a position where we have to prove ourselves in that movement. I think it's quite balanced. The people who are starting the movement are quite you know, come from diverse backgrounds on all levels, whether it's ethnical or gender or ideological even, and that will be one of the strengths of that movement.
What kind of actions will you be doing?
Well, we want to be a grassroots organization, but also we want to work on policy level and on communication level. So we will combine grassroots with lobbying and with you know, communication. But on the grassroots, we want to be present in all the neighborhoods or all the cities and towns where we can start the chapters. And there we want to develop things from the grassroots. I mean, we're not gonna decide already how we want to do this or that, but we want to organize the people, and we want the people to take initiative and organize things, and then we can move all together in these directions. So the struggles that we put as priority are obviously the anti-racist struggle, anti-colonial, and gender issues, and struggle against poverty. So these are the main fronts of our struggle, and of course everybody will associate us more with the anti-racist platform, you know, and I don't have a problem with that, you know, personally, but bonjour. But the movement is quite diverse, you know, also on priorities. Like, I think there is strong anti-racist hardcore in the movement, that is the essence of it, but I think within the movement there are also people who have other priorities, like struggling against poverty or gender and so on, so it's quite diverse.
So will you connect with the anti-capitalist narrative of big Western movements such as Occupy and Indignados, and will you connect actually with those movements?
I would like to, personally. If it's up to me, I would like to, because I am personally part of that ideological school. But I have to admit that the movement itself is more diverse ideologically. I don't know if I can characterize our movement as a left-wing movement. Possibly yes, possibly no. What I know is a very consistent, radical, anti-colonial, anti-racist movement, and it's a renewing movement. It's quite progressive. It's thinking differently in terms of identity, in terms of what defining this power relations within this continent or beyond. So, but it's in a way a new kind of movement that is not really classical in terms of left-right. You know, you have some elements in it that are quite more ecological than left. You know, you have some other elements that are more focused on cultural diversity and so on. So, but personally, I consider myself as left-wing, and I'm anti-capitalist, and I would like to connect with other forces who are actually like that too in the world.
And you warned the politicians that if they don't listen to you, you will start a political party eventually. Aren't you afraid that the danger that the system will absorb this movement and then will render it ineffective?
Well, I don't believe that the movement will ever become a political party. But what I said is that, you know, our first strategy is to put pressure on political parties and on other institutions, because it's not only the political parties, it's the government itself, you know, the business world, you know, who are discriminatory also against immigrants, for example, and also the, you know, all the cultural structures and so on. So we want to stay a grassroots movement, and I don't really believe that, you know, I think it's more important to have movements than to have political parties. On the other hand, what I said is, if you don't take us seriously, we will come maybe hurt you on the election level, you know. So what we can do, we can start lists, you know, but list is not a party. It's not like you start a party and so on. You can start a list and participate in elections. We did that already before, you know. And when you do that, you take votes from these parties, you know. Whether you succeed or not, you're taking votes from their way, and that hurts, you know. And so it's a pressure card that we have, but that's not our intention. We don't want to be a political party. But as I said, we're not even homogeneous in ideology, you know. Like it's very tough for us to be a political party as well. It's for us more constructive, even internally, to be a movement and stay a movement.
What do you think of parties like Podemos in Spain and Syriza in Greece?
I think, you know, it's not a bad thing that more of these parties come along, because on the other hand, you have these far-right parties that are also becoming more popular. So I think it's good that there is a left-wing narrative that is breaking out of isolation, that's breaking out of you know, dogmatic lines, and coming with a more humane and more accessible discourse, you know. And I think it's a good thing. I think we need these kind of parties everywhere. I mean, I believe in voting too. I go and vote, you know, and I want to have parties like that to be able to voting on, you know. And nowadays I don't have the feeling that, I mean, there is a party here that is also going in that direction, but I still have like some issues with it. And but in general, I don't believe the solution would be coming from these parties. I believe they are part of the solution, but not the solution. I think the solution must go deeper, much deeper than this. But it's part of the solution to have a political narrative that is also open and anti-capitalist and open for change and open also for diversity. So it's a good thing.
So a lot of the right-wing conservative parties, they gained a lot of votes at the recent European elections. What's the explanation for this trend?
As I said, I think it's like a phenomenon that will also repeat itself in the coming 10 to 20 years. We'll see it more, but I don't think this is anything but a desperate attempt to resist a change that is ongoing, that is not going to stop, and that is the shift in Europe on its identity, on diversity, and so on. I think it's a defensive reflex. It's a conservative defensive reflex. Xenophobic in a sense, and chauvinistic, and I think we will see even more growth of these kind of movements. But the danger is not if these parties score a couple of percentage more or less. The danger is if we do not find that new story that can connect us together, that we will have a double radicalization on two sides that are that is ethnical and fascist. On the one hand, you have these parties. On the other hand, you will have, for example, the Salafi fascists, and that together they will be the perfect partners to tango. And you know, because it takes two to tango, and then they can go at each other and unleash a kind of a ethnic war. And I think this is the danger. And if you have these two extremist movements growing, I think we can end up there in 20 years or so. But like, how to avoid that is to try to find the common ground in the middle, and at least on the left of both of these movements, and to show that the struggle is there. There is a struggle to fight, but the struggle is not between two ethnic groups, not between native and non-native. The struggle is between, on the one hand, people who choose to embrace the changes and to make out of them a positive story, and to take distance from racism, colonialism, but also from you know, like extremely conservative religious forms and fanatism, and build a new future together. And people who want to, you know, hang on to already archaic identities and chauvinism and so on, and stay separated and discriminate each other. So I think this is the main contradiction, and this is what we should you know, encourage. We should really work on that this becomes a contradiction, that it's not an ethnic contradiction, but that it's about choices that people make towards what future do we really want.
How does your ideal society looks like?
Ideal society. I have utopian dreams too, just like everybody, but I don't have the illusions that it will ever be possible to achieve. I think utopias are good to, as like a North Star, like you will never reach North Star, but it can show you the way, you can head in the right direction because of it. So I'm a socialist, I believe in a socialist society where actually capital is not a factor, and it's not a society where there are no rich. It's a society where there are no poor, and when there's nobody who is too rich. I mean, you can keep some dynamic and society by creating a very limited or a limited market that has indeed, for example, like measures that you cannot go above $3-4 million in capital concentration. I mean, that will not create structural poverty, but it will encourage people to work and so on. It will keep that so-called that mythical dynamism that capitalism uses as argument, that people want to make the best. In the meantime, nobody ever goes in their life above $1 million, except like really it's statistically like negligent, But if you already tell the majority, the 99%, listen, you can work hard and you can become like a small bourgeois with 3 million, it's okay, it's fine. But like what's forbidden, what's banned, what should be structurally banned is poverty, is like that people don't have, and like I'm not one of these leftist people who hate the word middle class, I believe eventually our goal is to reach the middle class. The middle class should be the generalization of everybody. Everybody should be middle class. The poor people should be middle class, and the rich people should come down to the middle class. So this is the reality. And that middle class can vary from a lower middle class to upper middle class. You have that, on that level you can have that game, you can play that game, but like nobody should fall under, nobody should go above. Is that possible? I don't know. But I think keeping it as an orientation, struggling for it, will make a better society. Whether it's a capitalism light or whatever, I don't know. But the essence is, we have to go in that direction. We cannot really accept that we are in the 21st century and we believe that we have not enough resources to feed at least the planet and to send everybody to a decent school and to this is unacceptable. Like we all know that it's possible. If you see the budget that people spend, I mean, countries spend on ridiculous things, not to mention weapons, and the budget's needed to, for example, eradicate certain diseases. It's like a scandal that it's not being done. And the only explanation that I have why it's not being done is that people do not want to eradicate poverty. That's the only. It might sound cynical, but I'm convinced of it because it is possible. But people don't want that. There's a lot of theoretical work on why they don't want that, but like eventually, I really have a strong suspicion also that there is no political will in this planet to solve its most structural problems.
Oh. Well, how are we going to fight it? With your movement?
Not with my movement. It's just a drop in a big, hopefully a river that will grow and grow and grow and like become and sweep things across. I think everybody should do their bit and we should connect. And at least I think there are some things we should learn. First of all, how to work together without always agreeing on everything. I think that's very essential. We have to learn that diversity is not only diversity of color, but also diversity of ideas. That if you want to have colored people in your movement, it's first of all, it's not enough just to tell them, we're diverse because we can accept a different color. You have to also be able to accept a different point of view. I think we have to accept each other's shortcomings. We don't even have to like each other to work together. Like, we have to have a platform. We have to come with our own mainstream, define a new mainstream and say this is the mainstream. And that platform should not be too difficult to reach. It's never gonna be the platform that is used for each and every movement of ours. We all in our own corners will go farther, we'll go deeper for our issues, the issues that are more important for us. But like we have to agree on agreeing on a minimum, and then you can build up a movement that can shake things structurally.
Thank you.